This is the FPV simulator called Tryp, T-R-Y-P. We're going to take a look at the pros and cons to this simulator. There are 4 simulators that I'm going to look at today to give you my opinion of the best one out right now. Now, I'm a complete amateur. I just started flying in February of 2022, and I'm still not a very good pilot, but I enjoy flying, and I'm on the simulator often, and I'm flying outdoors as often as I can too. Right now, of all the simulators that I've tried, this one feels closest to real life. Now, that's not to say that this one feels the best, because the best feeling one is called Velocidrone. But this feels closer to how my drones feel like in real life. So once again, I'm still pretty new at this. I don't know how to tune quads. And so I plug them up, and however they come is how I'm going to fly them. I plug in my rates, and then I get going. And so when I plug in my rates and I start flying my quads, they don't feel like race quads. They don't feel perfectly tight and taking every corner and tracking lines just so perfectly, right? Instead, they feel kind of like this, right? I take off, I'm hovering, but at the same time, I get a immediate sense of, oh my goodness, my quad could go left, right, forward, back. And in Velocidrone, which is my favorite FPV simulator, that is taken away because the quads are tuned so well. And so this simulator does not feel the best. It just feels most realistic to what my basic quads feel like, right? They aren't professionally tuned. They aren't, race quads. I plug them up and I get the flying, and this is what they feel like. So Tryp, as far as the ones that I'm going to be reviewing today, the 4 that I'm going to be reviewing today, feels most realistic. The throttle is decent. You feel like you're flying through wind. So with every movement, I'm not just in a vacuum here, but I'm actually, I feel wind resistance. I don't feel it pushing me, but I feel the quad moving against, some invisible force here, and that's the wind here. All right, I don't feel that with any of the other simulators. All right, so it feels the realest to my quads, which are not professionally tuned. You get that cool little wind effect. The grass looks realist, right? So when you drop in the grass, it's just like in real life, right? That's how the grass looks in real life. Whereas these other simulators, they don't even attempt to do something like this. All right, so when it comes to the realism, I think Tryp is winning. All right, where they do the best, I believe it's the proportion of everything. So when I'm in this simulator, I get a sense of feeling like I'm in the goggles. Like I'm outside, I got the goggles on, and all I can see is what's in front of me, which is what the camera sees. And so I feel that Tryp does a better job of that than any of these other simulators. Like those other simulators don't even come close. This comes real close. When I'm down, I really get a sense of, the size of this fence next to me. And this propane tank, it's not humongous, but it takes a bit to travel across it. Whereas objects in the other simulators that you're going to see in a bit, it's just like you're immediately past them. And so like this building, I'm coming up on it, and as I come up on it, I get a sense of how big the building is, right? And so like I got to give a little throttle to clear the building. I'm not just immediately up and over it. And so now when I move inside here, it's the same thing. I get a sense of like I'm actually in here flying it. Whereas with the other simulators, it's always a sense of like, oh, I'm sitting here on my computer, flying in a simulator. But with this simulator in particular, Tryp, I get a sense of immersion where I kind of forget that I'm at the computer. And so that's pretty cool, and I wish all of them felt like this. All right, so those are the goods to the Tryp simulator here. It feels closer to what my real life quad feels like, which is not professionally tuned. And more importantly, is the proportions are freaking great. The proportions are amazing. It feels like, I'm flying around outdoors with real size objects everywhere. All right. Only thing is that it doesn't allow me to tune the quad to the details that Velocidrone does, which is why I still fly Velocidrone most. All right, but this is a very good simulator. All right. The drawback really is that there's not enough boards. And this one, I find myself getting bored of flying it, within 10, 15 minutes. All right, now we are in here taking a look at another FPV simulator. It's called Liftoff. This is the simulator that I started and I learned to fly on. I've got maybe 300 hours logged in this simulator. And it is a good simulator, but now that I've flown other ones, I honestly prefer quite a few others over this one. All right, but it is still very good, especially if you like a challenge. Like, I would say that this is the hardest FPV simulator to fly on because the throttle is just real twitchy. So I use the same rates on all these, and I got the mid throttle at 0 and expo at 100, and even still, I find it a challenge to hold the throttle, to hold a low hover. And for that reason, it makes learning to fly on this one that much more challenging. It's a good thing because once you know how to fly on this and then you fly in real life is actually a lot easier than this, especially flying slow and low. Like in real life, you'll find that you can fly slow and low pretty easily, but if you start learning to fly on liftoff, you'll think that it's like impossible. And that's once again because this throttle is just not very good. All right, now it is fun to fly. It does not feel like real life pretty much at all. The rates are good. I guess the rates on all of them are good though. And so really it's just because they have a lot of levels that you can fly at, maybe like 10, 12, 15 levels. And you're bound to find one that's your favorite. And so this is called Hanover, and this is where I spent most of my time. Between this one and the little racetrack that they have, those are the two maps where I spent most of my time. And it really did help me become a decent pilot outdoors because it was so easy once I transferred or transitioned to real life. All right, so the good of liftoff is that there's a lot of levels. You're always gonna be able to get online and find other pilots that are flying or racing. And because it's the most challenging to learn on. So I feel that if you learn on liftoff, that you'll be able to fly in real life pretty easily, especially if you get like really, really, really good here. Like where you can hold these real low lines real easily, then real life is really not going to be a challenge at all. And so, they give us a decent amount to work with as far as tuning the quads. And so I do have it feeling better than this when I'm flying it normally. For the sake of this review, I wanted to keep it stock default and only adjust the rates. And so that's all I've done here. You can make this quad feel a little better. And I couldn't really figure out how to do that in Tryp. But in this one, if you come here, you can use your own rates here or your own PID settings. All right, and so I use the ones from, what can we call it? From Velocidrone. I use the PID settings from Velocidrone, and that immediately tightens it up. So now it doesn't feel as floaty anymore, and it feels better. But, the average user is not going to know how to do that for a lot of months. And so I'm trying to give a review on, you turn the game on and you get the flying. And so, out the box, your quad isn't going to feel this tight and in tune. All right, and so Let's look at Liftoff, and the next we're going to look at the easiest to fly. So far we looked at Tryp, which I feel is the most realistic to what real quads feel like. Non-tuned quads, that is. Now we're looking at Liftoff. Liftoff is the hardest to fly on, so it's the most challenging to fly on. Next we're going to look at DRL, Drone Racing Simulator. That's the easiest to fly on. And then finally we'll look at my favorite, which is Velocidrone. All right, now we are in here in DRL, Drone Racing Simulator. All right, now, so we're in here in DRL, which is Drone Racing Simulator, FPV Simulator. And this is the opposite of Liftoff. So whereas Liftoff was the hardest to learn on, this is going to be the easiest to learn on, because this has extra floatiness. Like, you just stay suspended in the air forever, which is very unrealistic. But when you're beginning, right, you don't really have the sticks down. It's actually very helpful, because you get extra time to sit here and think things through to make sure that you can, perform the movements that you're actually trying to perform. And so this is the easiest one to fly on. It's also the funnest. All right, so of all the simulators that I've flown so far, this one is the funnest, just because the level design is a lot more detailed and a lot more creative. Now, it doesn't look realistic, right? But as far as being fun, this is the funnest simulator to fly. And the extra float gives beginners like me extra time to think about their moves, which goes helping in the long run. All right? It doesn't always have to be, exactly like real life. Right? You can break things down. For this one, you want extra float so you can really work those stick movements, and that's great. And then once you got the stick movements down, you can get back to a better simulator or real life and, adapt to the proper gravity. All right, but even still, I feel this is very beneficial for someone just starting off to fly with all the extra float. And the DRL also has just the funnest boards, because it has the biggest boards, and it has a lot of these user-created boards, like this big, thing right here in the middle. This is a user-created section, but it's really fun to fly, and there's a lot of this in here. And I don't see this too much in the other simulators. All right, so this also has the biggest map. This is called Gates of New York, and this is the biggest map of any simulator that I've flown on. All right, you can go way over there. There's caves over there that you can fly in. Nothing special, but you can fly through caves. It's just basically a big tunnel. And they do have tunnels over here. So this bridge is just enormous. And the proportions aren't as good as, as Tryp, but, they're still good enough that, you just appreciate flying. And so, I just wish every board was this big, and they just had filled with tons of stuff that you can do and stuff to fly around, not just, trees and mountains. And so what I'm looking for ultimately in a FPV simulator is something about this size, but that has the proportions that Tryp brings you, and then has the flight feel of Velocidrone, which we will look at next. All right, so none of these are perfect. They all have their pros, they all have their cons. And the best part about DRL is just fun. It's fun to fly, especially if you don't mind the extra floatiness. A lot of people do. A lot of people hate it, and that's fine. But if you don't mind it, and you can use it as a tool to learn to fly better, then I think you'll really enjoy DRL. I do wish that they could fix the floatiness, because if they did fix the floatiness, I'll probably fly this more often. It's just that once you fly Velocidrone and then you fly Tryp, you really, realize just how fake this feels. But like I said, for learning purposes, I think that is perfectly okay. All right, so DRL wins as far as helping beginners learn to fly because of the extra floatiness. DRL also wins because of the level creativity. All right, these levels are really, really, really fun to fly. And you can hop on and create a room. And usually within a few minutes, people will start joining your room. There's always, I don't know, usually at least a few hundred people logged on because it tells you at the home screen how many people are logged on. And so that's pretty cool that you can always come in here and pretty much hop on and fly with some players and maybe play a game of quad or race or do whatever. But the proportions aren't there. So like I was saying with Tryp, like these canisters, they take a bit, these containers, they take a bit to fly across, right? But in this game, like you've immediately cleared it already. And the same thing with these buildings, right? We'll go to like a real building. So this is supposed to be a real building, but it's like, look at that. You've already cleared it, and that's just not realistic, right? And I don't get the sense of like, oh, this is a humongous building as I approach it. Like when I was flying Tryp, as I got closer, it just like took up the entire screen. Like already it would have taken up the entire screen. And as I got closer some more, it was just even more of the screen. And that really gave me that immersive feeling that none of these other simulators give me. See, this is cool, it looks good and all, it just, portions are just not there at all. And so, like I said, they all have their pros and their cons. I do enjoy flying here because I do enjoy the floatiness, but it's not for everybody, but that's just my opinion, all right? If you're brand new and you want to fly on something that makes it easier to learn, then I suggest you fly on DRL, all right? And just forget about the floatiness and just enjoy yourself and learn the rates and adjust the rates and find what you like. And ultimately, it's still a very enjoyable experience. It's just further from real than you would want it to be. All right, so this was DRL. Next, we will look at Velocidrone, which I feel is the best. And we'll take a look at why in just a few seconds. All right, so now we are in here taking a look at Velocidrone. I feel Velocidrone is the best FPV simulator on the market right now. And the reason being is that the quads feel amazing to fly. All right, so, I've been told that quads in real life can feel this good. I've just never flown one that feels like this. So this is what it feels like, when a professional tunes it. One of these guys that is racing and is actually a pretty good racer. This is how in tune their quads feel. All right, and so up until this point, I hadn't experienced this. And so I was basing all of my opinions on the best FPV simulator off of pretty much level design. And so I'd given DRL the win on that because they still have the most creative levels and they still have the most fun levels to fly. But now that I've experienced what a tuned quad is supposed to feel like, I don't really care to fly anything else. All right, and so this doesn't feel like my quads in real life. But now my objective is to make my quads fly this good. Because apparently a lot of guys say that this is very realistic to how their quads feel. And the thing is, it just, this drone does whatever you want, you tell it to do. So whereas on the other simulators, I try to make moves and I go a little left and a little right and I overshoot and I undershoot and all those things just, make for a little bit less enjoyable of a flight experience. But this here is the exact opposite. it feels so much better than the quads that I fly, that it's making me feel like I'm already an amazing pilot, when we saw in the other simulators that I'm really not. It's just that this quad is so in tune that it really makes it really easy to fly good. And so that's why Velocidrone is winning in my book. It's because they give you a better flight experience. Now, the proportions aren't there. So like I said, with this building, right, I'm here and like already I've cleared the building, and that's just not realistic, right? And it's the same thing when we go indoors. All right, it feels not bad. It's just that once you experience Tryp, you realize that, oh wait, these proportions are a lot better. And so this, okay, yeah, I'm in here, but I don't really get that full immersion experience because everything just looks so fake. Like that right there, it's just like, come on, man. Those pallets are like huge. And when I'm up on them, I should get that same sensation if I'm this close and the camera's right there. But I don't. It's just still, it doesn't have like arcadey textures, but it still has an arcadey proportions. All right, so arcadey textures would be like Liftoff, right? The graphics just look real arcadish, like an arcade game. These don't look that much, but the proportions just still aren't there. Like this building, like that's a 2-story building, right? It's gonna have at least 8-foot ceilings. And so when I lift off the ground, I shouldn't already be on top of the building. But, these guys apparently think that stuff like that doesn't matter, and I think it does. And so I think that, that the FPV hobby should be humongous, like as big as the video game industry. But, I think that a leader is going to come via these FPV simulators, right? Someone's going to get it right, so right, like Gran Turismo got racing right on the PlayStation 1 back in the day, and just completely transformed video games altogether and the whole racing scene. And I think the same thing could happen with FPV. It's just one of these companies has to step up and make it happen. Velocidrone is closest. If Velocidrone would adopt the proportions that Tryp has, I think this would be it would close out the scene, right? They would take a monopoly in the FPV simulator world, and basically nobody else would be able to compete. But I don't know, what the thinking is behind any of these simulators, but everything is just lacking. One does this good and does this bad. One does this bad and does this good. And none of them just have it all. And I would like to see one day one of these simulators just have it all. All right, so Velocidrone still wins just because the quads feel amazing to fly. Like amazing. Tryp wins in realism. DRL wins in simplicity of learning to fly if you're a beginner and you need that extra float, and that's perfect. And then Liftoff wins because it got a lot of levels and it's the most challenging. So if you can really perfect your skills on Liftoff, then flying in real life is going to be real easy. All right, and so that's my official review. I do like the menu system in Velocidrone, so I wish everybody else would adopt this. I don't have to hit pause in order to change my rates and wait for that, half a second to load. I just go right here. And that is actually very, very good for as far as keeping a good flow when you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. On the other systems, I gotta hit escape, hit a menu, go to another menu, go to another menu. Now I can change my rates. Then I gotta go back, then I gotta go back, then I gotta go back again, and now I'm finally in the game. But for the Velocidrone, make the adjustment, and I'm right back to flying. And you know what? Things like that matter. All these little details, they all matter, right? And the company that really puts it all together is the one that's going to bring a flood of millions of customers and pilots to the hobby and really make this what I think it can be. All right, so that's my review. Velocidrone wins. Hope this helps. Questions, comments, let me know. I will speak to you another time in another video. Bye.